James likes to tell a story that sums up what his life used to be like. He was speeding to make it to his sales team meeting on time. He lit a cigarette and opened the window of his sport utility vehicle for some fresh air. His cell phone rang, and as he tried to find it in a pile on the passenger seat, his cigarette disappeared. Answering the phone and distracted, he thought briefly it must have blown out the window. A few minutes later, still chatting, he happened to glance in his rearview mirror and saw flames shooting up from the back seat. Swerving off the road, he jumped out and yanked fast food containers, empty cigarette cartons, product samples, and scorched work papers from the back seat and tossed them into the roadside dust. When the fire was out, James didn't know whether to laugh or cry at what had happened. But he did know he was tired of not being on top of his life, and something had to change. There were too many such fires in his life, both actual and metaphorical, and he finally admitted he couldn't put them all out on his own. James has traits we describe as fast minds. Although these show up in many different ways in people's lives, the core challenges include difficulty with focus, controlling behavior, and/or disorganization. 1 in 25 adults across the globe struggles enough with these traits to have the clinically recognized condition, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Throughout the book, we will use the term ADHD to indicate the full clinical condition in its inattentive, impulsive, or hyperactive forms. The diagnosis of ADHD has been identified in children for decades, but in the last dozen years, scientists have acknowledged that the condition continues into adulthood for more than half of children who have it. The condition is also often missed in women, probably because when they were girls, they were less likely than boys to act in disruptive ways. They were less likely to fit the stereotype of the impulsive, hyperactive troublemaker or class clown. Instead, most girls and women we see with ADHD quietly struggle to focus and behave according to society's rules. Doctors and therapists use formal criteria to identify ADHD. The person must have a certain number of symptoms of inattention or impulsivity, hyperactivity that have been present since childhood and can't be explained by another diagnosis. These characteristics must cause significant problems in more than one area of life, thwarting success at school, at work, and/or in relationships. We see many people who don't meet the full criteria for diagnosis. This includes people who have only some of the required characteristics, had challenges starting later than childhood, have symptoms that are due to another condition, or have difficulties that impact only one area of their life. We find that the strategies, approaches, and exercises in this book can help anyone impacted by fast mind's traits, whether they meet the full technical criteria of ADHD or not. We see many people who fulfill all of the criteria for ADHD and have talked with other clinicians but have never been diagnosed or treated. We believe this occurs for two major reasons. Many clinicians do not understand the condition or are not comfortable treating it, and it takes longer than a typical 20-minute clinic visit to understand how a person functions day to day well enough to recognize the pattern of ADHD. We wrote this book so that people can understand whether they have the condition or traits of it and to empower them to get the help they need. A clinical diagnosis of ADHD should be made only when there is impairment from fast mind's type traits in the pattern described here. Often, when clinicians sit down with people like James to diagnose ADHD, they look for obvious signs of impairment, such as being dismissed from jobs or poor grades at school. But this focus on external consequences misses what it's like to live with these characteristics every day. It fails to capture the most common burden of fast minds, the extra time and effort it takes to compensate for its traits, such as late hours at work making up for the constant distractions during the day, or last-minute cramming on projects that won't get done without deadline pressure. People with fast minds who seem successful to others may, from their own perspective, just be getting by or living by the seat of their pants. They may be living with the constant stress of being reactive rather than proactive, handling demands at the last minute, under stress, rather than being prepared and feeling confident.